Western rom-coms. Bad. Very bad. Not enjoyable. Anime rom-coms. How's it going, everyone? Laughing here, and today I'm actually going to be reviewing both season 1 and 2 of the Quintessential Quintuplets. But before I get into the review here, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. It would be much appreciated. Getting right into it here, the Quintessential Quintuplets is a romance comedy kind of harem anime, but it actually has a little bit of mystery elements in there as well. Nothing supernatural, but there's definitely a mystery or two to solve while you're watching the show, which is fun. The main character, Futaro, is a straight A student, and his free time is spent studying. That's just what he does. So he becomes the tutor of the quintuplets to make some extra money because his family is super duper poor, which is kind of sad, to be honest with ya. So he is kind of faced with trying to basically herd the group of cats that are the quintuplets that just do not want to study. They want nothing to do with them. They don't want him there to get them to actually sit down, study, and pass. Otherwise, he will lose his job. Therefore, no more money for his family. But there's also another thing going on. We know from the get-go that he's going to actually end up marrying one of these quintuplets. Getting to the quintuplet characters, let's start off with Miku. She's the shy and quiet one. She's like super obsessed with like the ancient Japanese shogunate. That's just kind of her thing. She's also really bad at cooking. But in general, she's really nice and sweet character. Next up is Yotsuba. She is the athletic, super empathetic one, sometimes to a fault because people will kind of actually take advantage of her with that, which is kind of sad. She's also the worst academically. She'll get straight zeros on stuff. But on the good side, she's also the nicest to Futaro at first, at least. Next up is Ichika. She is the eldest out of the quintuplets. She definitely plays big sister going throughout the anime, really looking out for her sisters, sometimes to her own detriment. She likes to sleep a lot. She is super duper messy, but she also wants to be an actress, which sadly kind of conflicts sometimes with her actually studying. Next up is Nino, the staple to Sunder. Definitely has a hard exterior, especially at first, and definitely towards Futaro, but she does open up the longer the series goes on, which definitely is not a surprise. She is by far the best cook out of the 5, and she does have a soft spot for bad boys. Last but not least is Itsuki. She is super nice to her friends and classmates, but do not threaten any of her sisters because she will definitely turn into Mama Bear. She is definitely trying to kind of take the place of their mom, who sadly died before the series started, and wants to follow in her footsteps in pretty much all ways. If there's any sort of conflict, she does her best to resolve those with her sisters, which doesn't always end up the best, but she also wants to follow in her footsteps in terms of a career as well, and wants to be a teacher for students, even though she's not the greatest academically speaking. As we go through the story, each individual kind of character has their own personal conflicts that they have to resolve in one way, shape, or form, but it does lead to actually really good character growth and character development with it, which is pretty awesome. For a lot of the girls, they have to kind of figure stuff out on their own, but they do have help from their sisters and, of course, Futaro as well. And speaking of Futaro, they're also dealing with the blossoming feelings they have for him as well, because all 5 of them are sometimes quietly and sometimes not so quietly vying for his love. So they have competition in the house and around them, and their competition is very much like them in many ways. So it can get heated at some points, but in general, it is quite entertaining to watch. Adding to the mystery that started at the beginning of the series, we also eventually find out that Futaro met one of these girls 5 years ago in Kyoto, which that was kind of a defining moment for him, because before then he was kind of a delinquent and didn't do a whole lot. He met one of them, kind of reformed his ways, and it's also his first love, which is kind of cute. I know that's kind of also like a general like anime trope, like, oh, childhood friend kind of thing, but it adds some mystery to it, so I don't mind it. I can definitely kind of get past it personally. But it is kind of interesting because it adds to the mystery, kind of adds to who is he going to end up with. Just because the girl in his childhood ends up being one of them, that doesn't necessarily mean that he's going to end up with that character. But there's a good shot he will anyway. So there's a lot of kind of playfulness there of kind of who he met. Sometimes the girls don't even know. Did he just meet one of them, or did he meet more? So there's a lot, like I said, there's a lot of cool mystery there as well. A neat thing that happens is we actually get to learn a little bit more about the quintuplets about the same time Futuro does as well. And this actually gets expanded later on in season 2 even more, because he's trying to go from a kind of student-tutor relationship to an actual friendship with all of them, which is actually kind of sweet. And this actually kind of leads to more hijinks as well. Like Futuro will walk into a room and they're all dressed the same, and he has to try to figure out who is who, even though they all look identical. It's actually kind of fun. And it does have some deeper context as well to who he is actually going to end up with, but also who was the girl who he met 5 years ago. There are not a whole lot of negatives with the show, but there are kind of a few things that detract from it a little bit. So first and foremost, the animation's not bad, but it's not fantastic at the same time. And I will say I found the music to be kind of forgettable in a general sense, which I'm kind of bummed on because usually anime music's pretty good. There are also times where the main character, who's been sold to us as being super duper smart, just like has like a mental relapse or something, where he just goes super stupid. And it's really kind of annoying as an audience member because you're like, dude, you're smarter than this. Like, what the heck? This a lot of times happens when he's actually trying to figure out who's who out of the twins, and not necessarily in the example I gave before, although somewhat there as well. The frustrating part for me is there are actually like half and half times where they do it extremely well, where I get fooled, and or at the very least I'm unsure. And then there's times where I'm just like, dude, really? Like, you're smarter than this, really? There's also some side characters that I don't really care for. They're just not written very well, and so it kind of makes them stand out like a sore thumb compared to a lot of the other really well written characters in the show. When I first started watching this show, I figured it'd be kind of the typical rom-com harem anime. And I actually kind of walked away from it pretty impressed. It does have a lot of those similar tropes that a lot of other similar shows have, but I think it does do something actually kind of interesting. Especially the hook at the beginning of, hey, like we know he's gonna end up marrying one of them, and the mystery behind that is, like I said, a really good hook. But the story and especially the characters really kind of kept me going throughout the story, and that's what ultimately kept me going throughout both season 1 and 2. Overall, with solid character building, story arcs, and a little bit of mystery elements kind of thrown in there as well, the Quintessential Quintuplets is actually pretty solid anime. It's definitely not the carefree joyride I initially signed up for, but I am in no way walking away disappointed. I dare say it actually exceeded my initial expectations going in, which is why it's going to get an 8.5 out of 10 from me. I do recommend you give it a watch if you are a fan of the harem kind of rom-com anime genre dealio. Like I said, if you're into that, definitely recommend. Even if you aren't necessarily, I'd say, give it the old 1 to 2 episode watch. Give it a try. It is a lighter anime, but it's not too light to where you just kind of don't care about it. So definitely give it a go. I do want to say kind of word of warning, if you do watch season 1 and season 2, at the end of season 2, kind of a shocking thing happens. Don't Google it. It's really, really weird to say, but just trust me, don't Google the thing that happens at the end of season 2. You will get spoiled for the entire series. I made that mistake. I know what happens now. At the very least, what happens in the manga. So good shot's going to happen in the anime. But don't Google it, okay? This is my word of warning. Don't Google it. But I do gotta say, thank you so much for watching. I seriously appreciate it. If you enjoyed the content, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. And speaking of subscribing, I want to say thank you guys so much for getting me to 50 subscribers. We're like a month ahead of schedule, so thank you, thank you. You guys rock. As always, do something good for yourself. Have a fantastic rest of your day or night. And as always, take care.